To start with, I was just thinking about how to kind of structure this talk. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do for the next 15, 20, 25 minutes. I'm going to talk about what really is happening on the GST front. Okay, it's for both, finance, operations and such. I guess GST is the largest one kind of item out there. And so it's extremely important, and I think, I'll try to kind of bring about on that front, what's the materiality of it. I'll talk about what the government is doing on this front, okay? And then what's the impact on compliances, and what are you going to see really in the next 24, 36 months? How, at least what is my POV about what people should do, okay? And there are thousands of POVs. Mine is an insignificant one, but anyway, I have the stage, so I'll talk about mine. So, I've always felt that policymakers are marsupials. Marsupials are basically mammals who give birth to offsprings which are not ready to kind of go ahead and walk and so on and so forth. So kangaroos have this marsupium, they give birth. Humans, according to Mr. Harari, are marsupials also. I mean, you give birth to a child, but you have to take care of the child for the next, next few years. My wife will suggest next 50 years, I've just turned 50. But I think, and actually it was designed by, God Almighty to be like that, because in fact, according to Yuval Harari, okay, human beings, Homo sapiens, survived because they were marsupials, okay? Otherwise, at that time, okay, if a female was had to be pregnant and therefore immobile for 15, 20 months, okay, she wouldn't have survived in those times. So having ability to kind of go about, give birth in 9 months and then kind of take care, actually led to the survival of Homo sapiens. So it's important, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is that even for policymakers, okay, when you come up with a large GST reform like a GST reform, they couldn't have waited to make it appropriate for everybody, okay? They had to kind of give birth to this particular legislation to move ahead and then tweak it. I think the important bit is that people forget that, it needs to be taken care of and evolved as we go along, okay? I hope the executive remembers that, okay? A lot of people tend to forget that most of the time. But that aside, so when GST got implemented, everybody recognized that the legislation was not entirely there, okay? Especially I was lucky to be a part of a lot of those discussions, and the thought process at that point of time was that, okay, we understand that, these 4 or 5 things will remain. We'll take care of it, okay, going forward, okay? We're still trying to take care of it, okay? So GST as a legislation brought about, okay, significant nuances which have not been tested anywhere else in the world, right? Dual levy, it's there in Canada, but not the way that we kind of implement at all, right? Kind of a single federal common institution created under the Constitution to handle any kind of legislative changes and reforms, okay, which is within partnership with central and state, again, not thought of. You have something like the EU, but ours is a bit different, okay? It ensures that there has to be common kind of framework to kind of move ahead. It was the only framework that could have worked, okay? But it makes policy reform that much more, let's say, evolved. It was always difficult even otherwise, but now to kind of get a reform done, it becomes that much more difficult because you need to kind of get so many people, put their arms around them and then kind of move ahead. Okay, so that's one. The third bit is that it mandated both forms of the government, central and state, to kind of give away, abdicate some of their powers, okay, and get into a collective power, which meant that there were obviously revenue problems there, and there was a compensation activity to be kind of, compensation cess to be given. So that was the third bit. Again, not thought of, okay, at a generic level. And when you have such a bit about imposing compensation cess, okay, you need to worry about when does that underwriting end and what happens to your revenues after that, like any other company, right? You're getting the subsidy. Suddenly, if the subsidy goes, what happens to your P&L after that? So that bit. And the fourth bit, which people do not realize, is the fact that India generally was a non-compliant country. The chief economic advisor, okay, when issued a report before the implementation of GST, you can see it on the net. As per their estimation, the actual compliance ratio in India at that time was 41%. And what is that? 41% is what is the tax to be collected, expected to be collected as per their estimation and actually collected. So the actual collection vis-a-vis estimation basis their GDP data, okay, it was just 41%, okay. The last bit is that unlike what people thought, India already had very high tax rates on the indirect taxes. The effective rates for most products were exceeding 20%. They came up with, if the same compliance ratio was kind of done, the actual standard rate would have been anywhere about 18 to 19%, okay? Not standard rate. The actual average rate would have been 18 to 19%, which means that you needed to have some higher rates and kind of lower rates to come to that kind of this. So very, very high tax rates. Now, if you're going to go with a transactional kind of reform, with a high rate, okay, you need to have very, very strong compliance, tight compliance framework to ensure collection, okay. Anywhere else in the world you go, even in the most compliant countries, let's say the Scandinavian countries and so on and so forth, you can still kind of go with a high tax rate. Till very recently, the tax rates there were around 15, 16%, the highest ones. We as a country, with a 41% compliance, okay, wanted to kind of take on this huge reform where revenues were going to get kind of questioned, okay, at an 18, 19% kind of average rate, okay, and still go ahead. It was very, very brave, and hats off to the political leadership that time to kind of just take it on and move ahead, okay. So this was the ecosystem where GST got implemented, and then they came about this entire GSTN-led kind of framework of digital compliances, okay. And the entire compliance framework has evolved over a period. The biggest change that has happened on the compliance framework, and if you remember, till about 1919-20, the collections were around 11-12 crores, 12 lakh crores. The state governments wanted, okay, at a generic level, about the collections to be at least around 4-5 lakh crores at that point of time more, okay, than what it was. And they felt that there is a humongous amount of, let's say, revenue loss, okay, happening there. So they first did what? E-way bill, okay, that got implemented in 2018, okay. Then they came up with e-invoicing. Okay? And that actually changed the overall kind of framework. And in each of these times, I, as a part of association, was naive enough to say that sab theek chal raha hai sir, mat karo. Okay? And every time I went about telling them, whenever I got a chance, to the revenue secretary at the time, to saying that don't do this. This e-invoicing actually started in the midst of COVID, okay, October 2020. Okay, and I said that abhi kyun kar rahe ho? Thoda ruk jao. Okay, and it was visionary of the government. I couldn't have been more wrong. Visionary of the government to still carry on. So then it started for 500 crores and then the threshold kept on reducing. Now the threshold is 10 crores and it's going to reduce to 5 crores. They also did a couple of other things, okay. They pretty much made amendments to the law to see to it that if you're non-compliant, you're out of business, okay. You can't get an e-way bill if you have not filed the returns and paid the taxes. You can't issue any invoicing if you have not filed the returns, and so on and so forth. And I hear at times saying that kya badi baat hai, 1,87,000 crores that the government has achieved. What does that mean? But I think it means huge. They have actually changed this country, okay, from a non-compliant 41% compliance to the present estimated between 80-85%. The average rate, GST rate, against 18-19%, okay. The average GST rate today is at around 12%. Despite that kind of reduction, okay, we have shown significant growth. And that's actually visionary from the bureaucrats, Nandan Nilekani, who thought about this and put it in place and gone ahead and done. Brilliant stuff, okay. And I think India is now the epitome of tax administration, if you take that into account. Now, what does it mean? Yeah, and it requires a clap. I agree. I go across the world, okay, and when I talk about what India has done, they're stunned, okay. Now, what does it mean for us? And what does it mean for the government first? Let me just quickly cover that. Government is getting data on a real-time basis, okay, for all transactions now. With 5 crores the threshold going down to 5 crores, okay, the actual quantum of, invoices that will get covered, B2B invoices that they will get real-time information on, is around, right now it is 26 crores will be around 40 to 45 crores, okay? And which will constitute about 80-85% of the collection that they have, collections that they have. That is the information that they get. They have also connected this particular set of transactional information with Vahan. So today, and they're getting better at it, okay, today when you're going about doing this transactional bit, they can actually map your invoice to the e-way bill and where the damn truck is moving. So if you've said that it's Mumbai to Ahmedabad and the truck is moving somewhere in Tamil Nadu, they can pick that up. Okay, that's the kind of analytics that they are trying to bring to the table. Okay, so that's from a government perspective. They're using it for, investments. They're using it to understand the traffic, so on and so forth. A huge amount of use cases are happening there. From a company perspective, 2 or 3 things are happening. Okay, one is that obviously at a negative side, okay, the government is 3 streets ahead than the company from a compliance perspective. Okay, there are, from the clients that I have, there are at least 2 instances that, that I can talk about, wherein the government knew about a fraud that was happening within the company, which the company had no idea about, or at least didn't know as much, okay. They are the ones who actually came back saying that there's something wrong in these transactions, please, kind of come back, and then, people kind of thought about, and actually fraud had happened there. So the government knows more, okay, and the companies need to kind of come back and deal with it, really. The second is that, the first leg of assessments, or the years of assessments, that's actually happening in the next 12 to 24 months. So the, let's say, limitation period for the first year for government to raise demands or whatever it is, from 2017-18 till 2019-20, these 3 years, okay? The due date or limitation, the basic limitation period where no fraud is alleged and so on and so forth, that's actually coming up in the next 12 months. By June 24, these 3 years are going to be completed. Most people don't realize, okay, that now the government has analytics to the last T, okay? And they have analytics for the past, and they've got, their analytics is much better, okay? So now, three things are kind of going to happen. One is that assessments are going to start off, okay? You've got registrations across the country, okay? Bharti was there, Bharti is a client of ours. Bharti, for example, was filing 2 returns every year, okay, in service tax. Now it has 240 registrations, all the group of companies. Maybe they were filing not 2, but maybe 14 returns entirely. So monthly now they are filing around 730 returns, okay? And all of those 730 returns are going to get assessed over a period of 3 years, okay, across all locations in the next 12, 24 months, right? And that's the big problem that the companies need to kind of grapple with. And the only way to kind of handle it is to get technology in, or to get the relevant stack of requirements that will be looked at by the government at one place, and then put a structure to it. Okay. The second bit is that education within the administration is a bit varied. Okay. An understanding of a tax officer who's there in Delhi as a policy guy vis-a-vis a tax officer who's there in a Mofussil state, and I normally take the name of Bihar. I don't want to malign that state, but I'm just saying that any state which doesn't understand commercial, world as much as maybe, let's say, a person in Bombay, for that matter, that education is very different, right? And from that perspective, okay, we'll need to kind of, if all companies will need to deal with that. The second bit that I think people will need to do is on the policy front. The third bit, to my mind, is the fact that while the compliances will kind of carry on, okay, this kind of, let's say, digital plumbing is already in place, okay, of individual transaction flows that are happening. And to my mind, while we are talking about compliances and audits, okay, and what companies need to deal with, there is a humongous opportunity that is now becoming available. Because if you've got the same information that the government has on a real-time basis, and gold standard info, right? Let's say if you get the same e-invoice that you are reporting to the government, okay, in a digital form at your end, what you could possibly do with the use cases of using that data on a real-time basis for your, let's say, tax and non-tax kind of compliances, or non-tax use cases are massive. And that's going to be possible, okay, in the next 1 month or 2. What's really going to happen now, okay, is that, the government has appointed private IRPs. We are an IRP. We are the only big 4 who has got an IRP. We are basically, IRP is an invoice registration portal. Today, you send the invoice for getting registered with the government, which is the e-invoice, to this portal called National Informatics Center, which is run by NIC, National Informatics Center. It's a government organization. Okay, now there are another 3-4 of private IRPs who are there. When an IRP kind of receives that information, it needs to receive the entire digital invoice, okay, to the last kind of penny with all the PO numbers and all of that. All that digital information it invoice, because it needs to validate it. Some 55 validations get done on that invoice before it gets sent back with a sign of GST and so on and so forth. So if that information now you're going to receive and you can kind of pass on, okay, let's say I get a vendor information at that time on a real-time basis, I can obviously automate significant part of the accounting. Today what happens, I get the invoice, I do the OCR, I create the PR, then I start to reconcile with the government portals or even otherwise for doing TDS and so on and so forth. That entire activity is going to get transformed into saying that I'm first going to get a digital invoice. I'll kind of match it with the invoice that I receive. Okay, I still will do some iterative activity about this. I don't need to actually punch in anything, do OCR and so on and so forth. I get that information. There is a single source of truth that I have for doing all kind of compliances that are there with TDS, GST, whatever it is. I can automate, given that I have the last line of HSN codes and those kind of things available. I can automate most part of activity. I can create MISs and information which is available in real time. Given that the information is real time available with e-way bill information, I can start kind of planning, using it for logistics planning. I can use it for, the overall accounting recording. I can use it for compliances. I can use it for possibly even going ahead for financing and other kind of trending activities. So basically now, while I think, we talk about all of these as a negative, I think, it is going to be a fairly problematic over the next 24 months. People are going to see us witness a tsunami of litigation, and you need to be ready for that, okay, by getting your data ready. Of course, tech is the only way to kind of handle. There's no way that anything manual can work. But on the flip side, this particular information available on a real-time basis is a very potent kind of this to do financial transformation. And EY as an organization, we have put all our eggs. We are talking about. We are just not kind of professing. We actually spend close to, about 150 crores every year, only on the tax side. Okay, forget about the rest of it. Okay, and the supply chain, maybe another 100 crores, just to create technologies to kind of handle this kind of activity that's going to come up out here. So, just to summarize, okay, and before people throw me out of the stage, to summarize, 2-3 things. I think crap is going to happen over the next 24 months. Okay, so get ready for it. Use tech to kind of get ready. Figure that out. Okay, structure it. Okay. The second bit is that use advocacy. Okay, to kind of deal with some of the compliances. But more importantly, going forward, look at the other kind of make GST related data like the government is doing as a fundamental fulcrum to kind of transform significant parts of your and automate significant parts of your organization. The amount of digital data now that is available is absolutely massive. Don't miss out on this opportunity. So thanks a lot. Do I have any time for getting questions or no? Okay, so thanks a lot. I'm there, I can send out. Well, there's one question. Okay, so we are building use cases for that, okay, but this GST data is available on a real-time basis. Now, what is available in that GST data is, of course, the entire invoice that the guy sends. So including POs and the other kind of accounting information and the stocks information and so on and so forth. It also contains the e-way bill information. So you've got 2 or 3 things, right? One is that you've got to the line item wise information about what is the stock coming, what is the e-way bill, so when is it kind of going to move, okay? You can possibly plan about when is that, so you know at any point of time, what are the products on the input side, okay, that are coming in. Now people want to then use it to start planning and kind of getting a sense of where this particular product on the incoming side is. On the distribution side, again, the same thing, okay? I can convey it to my customer, okay, that this information is, this particular product is going on, this is the e-way bill, all of that, that's coming in. I can create portals for any discrepancy that kind of comes up, okay, communicate it through the particular chain. So from a use case perspective, that digital information available on a real-time basis, I think the potential is more and more, okay. We're trying to also figure out what we can use it for incrementally, other than the use cases I mentioned. Okay, thanks a lot.